Alright, so I know that the title sounds and reads a little bit pessimistic, but that's not really what I'm going for, or like negative. More so just actually just want to talk about the hero because I really like them. I think they're really fun. I think they're going to be a great addition to the roster of support player or heroes. But I just wanted to go over some of my like thoughts and opinions, and also maybe like I guess some tips in case you're having some trouble with him. So maybe like you could consider this like maybe like a bit of a pseudo guide, but not really because I'm not gonna go like that in depth, but just like some maybe like little tips here and there, something to help out. This guy is probably one of the most funnest supports I have played in a good long while. Honestly, like a really, really long time. Probably ever since like Alari came out, to be honest, and I can't quite place when that was, but it was. I think it's been a like a good minute at least. Like that was back during like 2023. I don't know. I feel like it's been a long time, but at the same time, it hasn't been. And he plays like, a hero that I personally think I'm gonna enjoy. I think if we're gonna look at like the roster of like Overwatch 2 heroes specifically and who have been added to the game, he's probably going to be like the best. I would argue he might be the best, like right next to Kiriko. I feel like Kiriko is still like probably, in my opinion, the best support that's been added to Overwatch 2 out of all of them. She's had some balance issues, obviously, but in terms of like, gameplay, fun factor, that kind of stuff, she's probably the funnest, like by far. I think in my opinion, when I've looked, I'm a big support player, right? So I've played a lot of Ana. That's my like main, but I've played a lot of support, and I have a lot of hours on support. So when I'm like looking at all this stuff, I'm like, I really like to like dive in and feel like, okay, is this next hero gonna be like something I enjoy playing, or is it gonna be like meh, or is it gonna be like cool? When Kiriko came out, I got that same vibe as I like feel when I like play Ana. She's fast, she's like able to do damage, she kind of like does her own thing. Same with Alari. When Alari came out, before her pylon was nerfed and she had that like whole off angle playstyle, she's very fun. I think Alari's kind of like lost a bit of her place in like the area. I don't really see too many, or the game, I guess. I don't really see too many Alari players anymore because I always feel like, in my opinion, there's always like a better option that you could play other than Alari. Alari is just kind of like there, but if they make her too strong, everybody complains. And if so, she's kind of like I would say like in that balance spot, but I wouldn't say she's like really great because you can get the same value, if not better, out of other heroes. When Lifeweaver was released, we all know how much of a train wreck that was. Still a fun hero, I would argue, and they've made him a lot better. He's actually feels like a good support now rather than just like absolutely completely useless. Still wasn't like my kind of play style. Like I enjoyed playing Lifeweaver when I needed to, I guess, quote unquote needed to, but he was fun. And Juno was fun too, but she also really didn't match like the playstyle like I enjoyed. Juno felt like, instead of like making, I feel like when you like a lot of other supports, especially like Kiriko and Ana, you have those like, or even Alari a little bit, you have those like abilities, like those impacts, those like huge like play making. You can just do stuff. I don't know how to explain it, but with Juno, it really felt like just kind of go with the flow pretty much. You didn't really do anything crazy. You weren't like you were doing stuff. You were getting high heals. You were supporting your team, hitting the enemy team. You had utility with the speed boost. The ultimate was really cracked on released. But otherwise, she kind of just felt like a, just go with the flow and not really like a very action. Kind of like the same like play style in a sense that you'd feel when you get like, when you play like something like Lifeweaver, or Lifeweaver kind of still a little bit stressful, or like Mercy, or like Moira. Just kind of like, she took a little bit more mechanical skill, but still kind of like that go with the flow, just like chill vibes, not really like a really actiony support. I again, I don't really know how to explain that, but I hope you understand what I mean. With Wuyang, I definitely feel like he's in that spot where I'm gonna like, he feels a bit more impactful, more like he's doing stuff. More of the supports should be built around like that feeling of where like you feel like you have like a bigger impact rather than just being like, you know, a heal bot, or just like you feel like your abilities have like oomph and like power behind them. They've done a good job on some heroes with that, not on others. I know that might be a controversial take, but you know, that's just how I kind of look at it. With Wuyang, he definitely feels like a hero that can pop off if given the chance. He has actually really good healing, in my opinion. I think a lot of people don't give him credit for that. His it feels weird because a lot of it's like passive healing based, but it's still quite a bit. I was able to consistently keep up with healers both on my team and the enemy team, so I wasn't having really like any issues there. I don't think he struggles with that, and his damage is really good too. Like almost, if I would have, I'd like balance the damage with the amount of healing I'd have. So if I had like 10,000 healing, I'd have like 10,000 damage. Like he actually cranks some high numbers of damage as well, and that's really good for that like a kind of like Overwatch 2 support kind of like, you know, play style that they've been trying to use or kind of go with in a sense for the last, you know, few years or something like that. I say that we got like Kiriko, and then we got like Lifeweaver, and it was like Lifeweaver wasn't supposed to DPS at the start. It was a little weird, but you know, they fixed it. When it comes to playing him, let me kind of like go more into his kit here, like kind of what I've experienced. So I've seen some tanks. When you're playing him, I've seen some takes where it's very hard to live when you have like somebody flanking you or you're getting dove, which is funny because like he has the abilities in his kit to essentially counteract both of those things. He has a knockback or knock up with his like E ability, his like wave, and he has a movement speed ability where he can move faster. So you think like if he's getting flanked or dove, that's not really like too much of an issue for him. It's like in a way it's like a kind of like a better Ana. Like he's not gonna have an issue with that, but like he does struggle with it. Maybe part of the reason that is because sometimes, or the wave ability, it doesn't really, depending on how the enemy is situated, it can sometimes be hard to like land that correct angle, or if you use it too early, like if let's say they're jumping in on you and you use it just a tad too early, the wave will go out, but they'll still be above the hitbox that it can actually hit, and it won't do anything. And you've given yourself a heal, and it doesn't really knock back enemies that far away. Like, it does a decent amount, but like, it doesn't. That's not really that far.
That's kind
I
of
mean,
small.
it's pretty far, but it's not really that far, you know, if you're really thinking about it. And his damage is good, as I mentioned, but it's a bit hard to control, I would say. Maybe I'm just not too used to it yet, but obviously when you have like this weird orb thing going out, getting that to hit a target, like when they're standing still, that's easy, but getting it to hit a target when they're moving around and shit, and you gotta like, and you're just jumping all over the place, and you're like, I gotta hit this guy, I gotta hit this guy, I gotta hit this guy to kill him. There's obviously some issues there that you're gonna experience, and that's really gonna hurt. His speed ability is fast, but it's not so fast that DPS like can't kind of keep up with him, especially like the characters that do like the flanking. Like they usually have their own kind of like movement or speeding abilities, so they can sometimes catch up with you. So a lot of the times you can kind of play like at like a slight off angle, or like high ground, or like just slightly separated from your team, but you always kind of want to be close enough that you can always peel off back to them and go back to your team whenever you need like some extra peel or extra healing from your other support, because that's one thing he struggles with. He can kind of like on-innate himself, but at the end of the day, that's not going to do that much when you have a DPS chasing you down, so you're definitely gonna make sure that you kind of need that extra healing. And I compare him a lot to Ana, because not only because I've played a lot of Ana, but because he kind of feels like Ana too, in a weird way. Like, he has movement abilities, but he kind of feels like this weird mix between like an Ana and like a Mercy in a sense. And the reason I kind of say that is because his E ability, his wave, it has that heal amplification on it. Kind of read that a lot of people, or some people at least, were struggling with the idea of like how to use this. It's not really like an ability that you use to like top somebody off or something. You kind of want to just use your little right click heal for that when they're like just a little bit of HP missing. But when they're like, you know, half HP or they're starting to get critical, that's when you want to use it, just like an Ana nade, to get that extra heal amplification. This is going to help you and your other supports so that they can continuously heal that target, make sure that he's always getting the healing that he needs. So that's kind of how I view using it, is always like using it in that sense of like focusing on throwing it down when my target needs healing. Not like save it, like you can use it for yourself when you need, just like you would an Onanade. You can just splash and knock back enemies. The biggest value you get from it, I would say, is when you can hit both your tank or like whoever needs healing plus the enemy that's focusing them, so that you get the knock up to push them away, which is going to help reduce the amount of damage that they're doing to that target, as well as the healing that comes from, you know, just hitting it on, you know, the person you're trying to hit. So it's a good ability. It's a good ability, but I feel like some people, you kind of use it wrong. They kind of like, you just throw it out there and they're like, why am I not doing any healing? Well, you're using it incorrectly. That's why. His right click, like, this is something I feel like, in my opinion, I think the best way to play this is to kind of like throw out an orb, right click, like, so right click who's ever low, like click that and throw it at orb, and then just like juggle between healing them and throwing like damage orbs out. Now obviously if they get into critical, you can throw down a wave and then you can heal them a little bit, like you can focus them a bit more. But that's how I get these big damage numbers, these big healing numbers out, is because I'm shifting between both of them as I play, like you should be doing it. At least that's how I look at it, you know. It is a little bit weird, and sometimes you do have to like focus more on healing, or sometimes you don't need to heal at all and you can just focus on damaging. Just depends on the situation, but that's kind of how I like to do it. Always make sure that your healing passive is at least on somebody, kind of like you would like a Zen orb. So you can right click somebody and just put it on them. Then you can just kind of set it and forget it. But you know, if they need healing, obviously, you know, might hold down the right click, might give them a splash, give them some extra heal in there. But for the most part, that's kind of how I feel like you'd be using the ability, and switching between his healing and his DPS, so you really come out on top. Another thing I would say, and some people might not notice this, obviously, but his ability, or his primary fire, it does like a little explosion, right? It does like a little splash. So if you find you're having a hard time getting those direct hits on targets, the best thing I can say is, like, in the same essence of how you might play someone like Pharah, since he does have a bit of an explosion radius, just aim at their feet. It'll probably do like less overall damage, but you're more likely going to be able to hit that shot if you feel like you're missing those direct shots. At all times as well, you usually want to be far enough away that you're getting the empowered orb, so it's like boosted, it does the full amount of damage, and not close enough to where you're just hitting them for like less than 25 damage. I think a little over 25 is not that much, versus where if I do a whole orb, look at that, does like 100 HP pretty much. So yeah, try to make sure that your orb is empowered when you're going out and trying to hit people, because then you're going to make sure that you're doing the maximum amount of damage possible. There's also a unique kit. I really like this about him, because it's really fun to just fuck around with, to be honest. He has this, the way his primary fire works is that you can throw it out and you can move it up, you can move it down, you can move it around corners to hit like a target, even ones like you can't see really. You could just kind of like guess that they're kind of there and just like have it hit them. It's a very cool ability, and I think they did a really cool job at designing that. That's like, that has to be like the most unique feeling of like a weapon attack I've, you know, you've probably seen it, like there's probably been like a feeling of it in games, but in terms of like a hero shooter, I feel like I don't think there's anything really in the same vein of where you can just like do something like that where you just fucking move and you're like painting on a screen. It's really cool, and I like how they designed it. It does have, it can't do really tight turns, so it can do pretty tight turns, but like if you, for instance, you know, if you go too far, if you want to get in the empowered, but you can't really like see, so I'm waiting until it's empowered, but I can't really turn it into him because I'm too close. I'd have to back up a little bit, and then, you know, it gets closer. So it's not really like that. If you're trying to do something like that, I mean, I probably could just stand there and throw it directly, but like if you're trying to do something like that, it's not really that intuitive. But when you're trying to like circle it around, just be aware that it can be a little tricky in certain situations, because it does have a nice, like relatively nice turn, but it's not like amazing. It's like, it's tighter than a Reinhardt charge, but it's not like you can't just like fucking you know, push it forward and make it go like all the way around, and you can't pull it backwards either. It only goes forward, so you gotta keep that in mind too. Let's talk about his ult. I'll get to the perks real quick, but let's talk about his ult real quick. I like his ult. I think some people feel like it's weak. You know, to me it doesn't feel weak. It feels like it has a good reliable amount of combos and setup that you can get with it. It's weird because, you know, like it looks at first glance, it kind of looks like a worse Lucio ult, because it only targets one person, it only gives them shields, and it only gives them heals. So it's kind of like it looks like it's a worse Lucio. Like, you know, when you're looking at it, you're like, man, this just gives you shields and only for a little bit of time. This is just fucking Lucio, but for one person. But where the key point comes in is that people inside the radius get knocked down when somebody has the ult on him. So this can make a really cool combination. I think I've seen some bigger YouTubers already like kind of show how you can combo like certain ults with it because of the knockdown effects, like Junker Queen's ult when somebody runs in, getting a free knockdown, and like Tracer pulse bombing them. With the high overhealth, she can just go in without any risk pretty much and get like a free pulse bomb. So it's stuff like that that's going to be like really key to playing with your team. But if you do need to use it in like a quick fashion to kind of save somebody, that knockback's really good at pushing people away from the target once they get hit, and it also heals them. It's kind of like a nano boost in a way. Not really, but it's kind of like I guess it's more like a singular, like I said, a singular Lucio ult that can save one person, because not only do they also they get the ult, right, but they get healed afterwards. So not only did it like bring it up, like it gets like a bunch of overhealth on him, but it brought him up to half health after that heal. The only thing I think would be more cool is that like, and maybe I don't know, you hear me out, but if when it exploded, pretty much it healed not only the person that it was focused on, but like everybody around it got like a big splash of like instant healing. Maybe that would be too strong, but I think it'd be cool. Like, I feel like maybe if the fight's not really going right that way and it has to like push back, or if your entire team wants to push in, they get like a big burst of healing when it does like the explosion. Or maybe that'd be too strong. I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, it might be too strong, but at the end of the day, I think that's probably like one of the cooler things that he has. And I think he's one of those, he feels like one of those supports that people are kind of like, in my opinion, gonna sleep on for a bit, but he's actually gonna be like really strong in the right hands, and maybe even strong in like the general player base. The only thing I'd say is like, even though he's really cool and his kit has, like really good synergy in itself, and it has all these like cool unique features and stuff like that, and he does like really good supporting, he kind of feels like he's in that boat where it's like, could there be a better option here for what I'm playing as versus playing him? Like, if I wanted to, have a protection for like an ally or something, why, if I wanted shields, why not like just play Lucio for the ult? If I wanted like an Ana nade, why not, choose Ana and get like the, double nade major perk that's going to come out next season or something like that. It's like, it's kind of like in that essence is like, I see maybe he might have a hard time fitting in, but at the same time, he kind of does a little bit of everything in a good way that it doesn't really like conflict with his ability to do his job. So maybe he won't run into that issue, but you always have to ask yourself, like, is he going to find his place, or is he just going to be like that one kind of hero that kind of sits there and is kind of like chosen in really niche situations while certain heroes are like the main pick? I don't know. We'll have to see if he's like going to get really strong and be like a meta pick. I don't think he's going to be meta unless they give him like an outrageous buff. I don't think he's going to be a meta hero, but I think he's still going to be like playable enough, in my opinion, playable enough to like actually play him. And you're not like getting flamed like you would if you were to choose someone like Lifeweaver on release. So that's how I look at it, at least. Lastly, let's take a look at his perks, right? So he has 2 minor perks. Well, I mean, every fucking hero has 2 minor perks. That's not news. Every hero has 2 major perks. But let's just go over them real quick. So the first 2 minor perks that you have: Overflow, gain 10 ammo and 33 healing resource when Rushing Torrent is activated. So that's going to be like every time you activate your speed boost, you get extra ammo and you get more healing resource. I see this as like something you'd kind of want to choose if you want to like be spamming that ability and like up in there and not really saving it. Like you want to like really play with your team, then it can be like really helpful, and you can kind of like dodge the enemy shots because you're always moving at like twice the speed as everybody else, pretty much. Well, not that much, but you get the idea. And then the second one, balance, restorative stream, passive healing increased by 40% for 2 seconds when you deal damage with water orbs. Now, personally, because he does so much damage, I think balance is the preferable like minor perk to get here. I can see where you'd want to choose overflow in certain situations, but in my opinion, it's just not really a good perk, especially if you want to kind of save your running away ability for when you're getting dove or when you're going to get like flanked or something like that. Even though it's not that great, it's not really something that I would really take. I feel like you're missing out on a bunch of basically free healing if you're choosing balance versus choosing overflow and having to constantly use it to get like that extra healing that you would, without choosing balance, pretty much. That's how I look at it. Your opinion might be different, but if it were me, and I am me, I would go with balance when you're choosing a minor perk. Then for major perks, this one might be a bit controversial, but personally, I like to go with Ebb and Flow. And let me go over both of them, but I like to go with Ebb and Flow, but I've been thinking, this is kind of like the only support perk, I would say, or at least at the moment. And maybe you've felt this in other heroes, but this is the only one I can say definitively feels like this one's going to be good on some maps and that one's going to be good on other maps. And here, let me get into it and I'll explain why I think that. Ebb and Flow just means that when Guardian Wave rewinds to its starting location, or when you use it, it's going to rewind to its starting location, deals 50% decreased damage while rewinding. So basically, you click it, it rewinds and comes back and deals less damage. With this ability, I'm going to choose it here, but I'm pretty sure it does come back all the way. But I'm pretty sure if you hit a wall early, it'll come back faster. So yeah, it does come back a little bit faster there because it's not traveling that full distance. That's really cool. I think that's a cool ability. I think because it's doing like, you know, if you're using it in that sense that you have to like, if you're doing the best, like the most effective way and you're hitting your allies and the enemies and it's coming back, that's the best option there. However, the other major perk that he has, Falling Rain. Simultaneously control 3 water orbs that deal 60% decreased damage and have 25% decreased empowered explosion radius. This feels like the wording there feels like it's gonna be like worse, but it, you know, they always look at it. It is a little bit better. Personally, I don't like to take it, and the reason is because it just doesn't have enough damage to kind of break that threshold of like 250 HP that most heroes tend to like be around. So for instance, if we were to shoot an empowered orb at this robot here, it does about 125 damage. I think that's what that is. We got 4 bars and then I'm pretty sure that's 5 extra points. Or sorry, 120, not 125. Because it only does 120, 2 hits are only going to do 240. It's going to give you a lot more damage, but it's not going to break that, you know, that threshold for those 2 front 50 HP characters unless you're landing all 3 hits. Now, obviously against certain targets, like when you're looking at Tracer, Widowmaker, Freya, Sojourn, you know, these fast-moving targets that have 225 HP or less, that's when it's useful. That's when it's very useful. However, since most of those characters do happen to be snipers, this is why I think it's like more of a map-dependent ability, right? So if you're in a map that has like a lot of tight spaces, a lot of corners and stuff, and I think getting the perk that does like the knockback where it, like it rewinds the wave back to you at like a decreased amount of damage, but it comes back. I think in those situations that is going to be the better one, because such tight corridors is going to be really hard for people to like, you know, avoid and stuff. That's going to be like a whole hectic thing in of itself. It's going to come back faster too because it's going to hit a wall faster. So in that regard, you pick those on those like tight cornered, controlled, sealed off maps. Whereas on the maps that have really long sight lanes, or really long sight lines, so like your sniper maps, you know, like Havana, Circa Royale, Junkertown. On these maps, that's when I think picking like the 3 shots is going to be better, because he almost doesn't have any fucking projectile drop off and it just fucking goes forever. Pretty much. And I think it still keeps going even after you lose control of it. Yeah, it does. So it's actually a really good ability to use when you're fighting against like sniper heroes on that long range map, because you can hit them, it's going to do that full 125 damage, and they might think twice about like peeking that angle again. Now it does have some travel time, so in that regard as well you might have some issues, but again you can maybe you can like throw it around a corner and hit them or something like that, you know? Look at those kind of things. Try to do something like that. But that's how I see these major perks. One's good for tight spaces, one's good for long ranges. So choose it in those map situations where that is going to be the best outcome. And I think that's going to be really like the best situation, like the best thing that you can do in those situations, you know? I think they really play like hard into those two separate roles really well, and I think that's where they shine. So I don't think any other supports really have an ability like that that kind of like showcases that kind of like map dependence that's needed for like for a perk. At least that's how I look at it. You know, you guys can tell me differently if you think differently, but that's how I think. At least, you know, that's my job. Just hear me out. Hear me out, all right? I've pretty much gone over his whole kit. I don't think there's anything else that I really wanted to, you know, talk about. I think he's going to be a great addition to the roster. As I mentioned, I think Blizzard did a really good job on his kit. I actually feels like something that's like unique enough that I'm like, you know, maybe there's been like that tracking with like the finger thing and the like the moving orbs, but I feel like, again, I feel like I haven't really seen that in many hero shooters. But, you know, the 3 or so that I've played, being Paladins, Marvel Rivals, and Overwatch, and I guess TF2 if you count it. At this point in time, I don't think he needs any buffs. I don't think he really needs any nerfs. Except for maybe that cool thing they could do with his ult. But again, that might be a little bit OP. The only other thing is, like, he feels like he should be better at escaping like a flank or a dive than an Ana. But at the same time, it doesn't really work that well. So, at least from what I've noticed, or like, and from what I've been saying people hear or say, like, he's not a sitting duck, obviously, but like, he's like a waddling duck, you know. He's not moving across the map like a Mercy or like a Kiriko, but you know, he's moving, just not a lot. Anyways, I hope you liked the video. I've been trying to upload more often, but last week pretty much I've been engrossed in grinding Minecraft every day, so I've been really focused on that. So like that's why there's been a bit of a delay in video. But I hope you enjoyed this. If you have thoughts or opinions about Wuyang, where he's going to be placed like in the meta, how he's going to do, if you have disagreements, I don't know the words, versus what I've said and what you think, you know, go ahead and share them in the comments section. I'll take a look and I'll try to, like, I keep an open mind, right, and see like, okay, this guy's saying that, this is why he's thinking that. But, you know, I want to keep like the discussion open, so we'll see what everybody thinks and kind of get like their overall opinions on it. But yeah, I hope you all have a good rest of your day or night, depending on when you are watching this, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.